The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
If you're building or buying or selling a home, the real estate crew's got news for you at the Real Estate House Party.
With attorney Rick Carter,
Real Estate House Party.
paralegal Kathy Holtshouser,
Real Estate House Party. Come in, have fun.
and comedian Tony V. Now, here's real estate attorney Rick Carter.
Welcome and thanks for joining us here on the Real Estate House Party. We got Tony V back.
I'm back. I'm home.
We got Maria from Everybody Loves Raymond, and we got I guess Scott.
And you're Frank.
And I'm
you're
Frank.
Frank, yeah.
Yes, I'm Frank.
Yeah.
And we got Scott Kingsley, who's
How
a
you
constable. And
Hi, Scott.
Scott.
we were worried
Nice to
about
be
Tony
here.
V being served a few times, and we're wondering if it was actually Scott Kingsley at one point.
No, he didn't serve me, but I've been served. I've actually had to go. I had to go finger somebody for.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Go,
Do we want
For
to
a
hear that
friend of
story?
mine, like he was
Oh.
serving his wife.
Oh, you had
papers,
to
and
show
I had
them.
to go. That's her, which felt that's probably the creepiest thing I've ever done.
Right.
And I've done some creepy shit before.
any
We've heard.
expression starts with that. It does sound a little creepy.
Fingerer.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had a,
Yeah.
That's an old timey 30s, detective nomenclature.
Vernacular changes
Yeah,
over
right.
the
It
years. You gotta be
changes, right,
careful, you
right.
know?
Yeah, I heard you finger that dang. Yeah, that means something. It meant something different in the
something
30s.
different then. All right.
I think
so,
Tony missed us.
I think he missed
I
us, so we
do.
missed him.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
It was like the
Sure.
time. it was
If
like
that
the-
helps you sleep at night, you keep that thought.
Well, I need
Yeah.
some help.
Yeah,
So,
no,
yeah.
it's good.
You didn't think of us at all while you were
I
on your trip?
constantly, yeah. Because, I don't know if you know this. There's a lot of real estate between here and the other
I
coast.
bet.
Yeah.
And there's a whole shitload of nothing.
Right.
Have you ever driven across this country?
I
I
driven
looked
to
out the window
Florida.
in the plane.
You've seen
And it's
holy
endless.
and it's
It's
I mean,
endless.
it's seemingly it's just.
Well, it's
we
tough
had this-
driving,
Go by the
right?
cornfields.
Oh my God, my son and I did it. We had a ball, but we had a gag. And this gag lasted about a day and a half, where I would be driving, and every 20 minutes I'd go, corn. And he'd go, no, sir. I go, yeah, I'm telling you, man.
So you did that
Corn.
for a day and a
For a
half.
day and a half. Everywhere we went.
I would have loved to have been a fly in that car.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
And then, we got to a point where, you'd stop, we huge, we're not fine diners, truck stops, diners are our wheelhouse and stuff. So you get to talking to people. And, as a gag, because we don't know anything, we go, there's a lot of corn. The guy goes, yeah, it's feed corn. We don't use it. I go, people don't eat that corn? He goes, no, that's for the cattle. We make ethanol out of it and stuff. I go, so there's hundreds of miles of corn and nobody's eating it.
Yeah.
He goes, no. I go, that's like an agricultural strip club. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People
You
just
could
stand
go in there and you can't do anything
People
about
go,
it.
man, look at that corn. I'd love to have some of that corn. I can't have any of that corn. I got my own corn at home, but I don't,
I can touch that
I can
corn.
touch
at
that
home.
corn.
Right,
but
right.
This corn's not for me. Yeah, the whole thing was great.
It was just bits the whole way.
The whole
then, huh?
way. I mean, my son is like a carbon copy of me, so we
know
on the
Gus.
same wavelength as.
So
as each
is
other.
he doing okay?
As far as
Did
I
you
know,
cry when you left
I
him?
did.
Yeah.
I wept
Did he
a little.
cry?
No.
No.
I mean, maybe after I left, he was homesick for the first week and stuff.
Yeah.
but
So has he
seemed-
acclimated
he seems
himself
to
on
be
the Jimmy
adjusting.
Kimmel show?
Yeah, he's working. He's a PA on the Jimmy Kimmel
That's
show, which is
awesome.
good. And
Someday we're going to be seeing him sitting in the chair,
I
right?
hope so. I
Yeah.
hope so. I hope so.
you did-
I have no other retirement plan, so I hope so.
So Jimmy Kimmel someday is going to walk in and go, "Who is that intern? Or who's that PA over there?"
And it's Tony V.
Tony V's son. Let's get him
I
on.
owe Jimmy Kimmel a huge debt. He didn't hesitate.
No,
know,
that's
when
pretty
Gus
good.
That's
needed to
awesome.
work,
What'd you do?
so.
You called to see if you could get him as an intern?
Intern, yeah.
You
and-
said,
No,
no,
we
how
don't
about
have any-
this? Why don't we
Yeah.
give him a job?
Yeah. and-
Really?
yeah.
I'll take a job all day long, right?
Also facilitated by my good buddy Bobcat Goldthwait, who's
Nice.
the intermediate.
Hey, it pays to know people,
Good. It does.
right?
What's Bobcat doing?
Recouping from his accident.
We're supposed to. What accident?
He got in a car.
Oh, you're falling into it, aren't you?
he got in a car.
You did your best.
We're supposed to be. We have
He got in
Scott,
his, yeah, he's a.
but is he alive? And
He's fine.
he's gonna be
healing.
okay?
He's healing. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Poor.
So maybe what we'll do is ask Tony V, because it sounds like you want to move on. Maybe in the next 30 shows we'll ask him to tell us one story about his.
Exploits?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went everywhere. Went Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We went to the Arch in St. Louis. Went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. We went to Oklahoma City to the bombing memorial.
Oh, you did?
Which was very moving. I stood on a corner in Winslow, Arizona.
Did you?
Yeah.
It was such a fine sight to see.
It was, and wasn't either. The flatbed Ford was there.
That's
it's
right.
it's
That's
really
awesome.
amazing. It's pretty amazing. We ask me another thing. Write these down, and I don't want to cut into this time, but we had a ball. We went to the Petrified Forest.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Did you
Cadillac
take
Ranch.
pictures?
Yep,
Yeah.
went to Cadillac Ranch.
Were you scared?
I was not scared. No.
Oh, listen to you.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, you already.
And you had a little debacle in Vegas.
That's a minor speed bump. We're over.
Yeah,
it,
Now, the
you know.
biggest thing is you lost your planner, though, right?
My day planner.
You don't even know what gigs you have coming up.
I
at this
didn't know
point.
with
I
the
know.
planner.
It's 2015, right?
Right.
It's not even up to
Oh,
date.
you lost your 2015 planner.
No, this is my actual date book. I
we're
still
only
have a
kidding
book.
you. Does the title say I'm wide open?
Wide open.
But you guys were able to regroup and continue to have
Yeah,
a nice
but
trip.
listen, I've been in Vegas many times and dangerously close to leaving with just the clothes on my back. And this time I actually managed it.
Wow.
I had to go buy new underwear so I could finish out the trip. Yeah,
That's unbelievable.
yeah, but 20 minutes.
was it broad daylight?
Broad daylight.
That's just so.
Cameras everywhere.
didn't
Security
they-
van in
didn't they
the
accuse
parking
you of
lot.
being
And they were
involved?
sort of like skeptical. Like, so your car got broken into. Yeah, I was in.
Do you see the
Right,
broken
yeah.
broken window with
Yeah.
all the stuff gone?
Yeah,
Yes. It
yeah.
got
So
broken.
anyway,
Too bad they stole your golf clubs too, huh?
they stole everything. About
Really?
$10,000 worth of shit in there.
Really? Oh my God.
That's what the
Tony-
insurance company
Yeah,
got.
yeah.
Did you check eBay to see if anyone's selling your underwear? You could maybe catch them.
I never thought of that loophole.
Have a look.
Yeah.
Wow, that's too bad.
All right, we're going to talk about some serious.
Some really good stuff, guys.
Oh, no.
No, we're going to talk about landlord-tenant situations. 'Cause we're having a seminar tomorrow,
That's right.
right? And
Are you coming?
Yes.
Even after today?
Yeah.
Well,
He's going to decide.
I thought it was next week anyway.
Cautionary tale. Yeah, sure.
I lost my date book. My
it
dates
with
are tickled
Tony?
to
Well,
death.
if you go to Vegas, I know where
No
you
more
can pick
phone
one up
calls
cheap.
for me.
I'm waiting to see my date book on Pawn Stars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or any of your stuff.
Any of my
The
yeah.
Vegas, they have the pawn shops in
Vegas. That's,
yeah.
Go to
that's
that?
where it is.
It's not as big as
I
they
didn't.
say.
I didn't go this time. I've been there before.
Have
Yeah.
you?
Yep.
Do you
Yeah.
guys hightail it right
It's-
out of town after
It's in a
that?
sketchy part of town. Well, yeah, I had to get the window fixed the next morning early
That's
on,
too
and
bad.
then we just.
Did
booked.
you bring 2 sets of keys this time?
One set of keys got stolen.
Yeah. How ironic
the
is that?
extra set of keys got stolen.
I mean,
Wow.
that's after you spent the time and the money to go get another set.
I didn't even think about. that. But after
We
it
thought
happened, I
about
put it
that.
out in the I put it in valet because that was my fear that they'd come back and take the car.
Right.
Well, glad that didn't happen.
Ugh.
Yeah,
In hindsight, it would have been better.
I know,
I'd
I
have got
know,
on a
I
plane,
know.
cashed it on the car.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
You got to think quicker on your feet.
Did you lose my
Next
computers
time.
out of that too?
I had 2 computers.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of computers left. Back to landlord tenancy because this is our prep for tomorrow's class. So we do a lot of classes for brokers, and they're actually getting 2 credits tomorrow on landlord tenant.
Wow. Are we talking landlord tenant for the entire time?
No, we're going to talk about how to convert.
Sorry, Scott.
Yeah,
We're going
that's
to
quite
talk
right.
In what respect, landlord tenant? What are the issues?
a lot of issues. Oh my god.
Tenants have more rights than landlords,
In
don't they?
Massachusetts?
In
Well,
Massachusetts?
it seems that way.
Yeah. Well, that's
No,
what
you-
most people think.
You can
right?
go out on the limb,
Well,
Scott. Massachusetts is
the-
one of the most.
The concept is this: the tenant is not expected to be sophisticated. They're consumers. They have consumer laws. The landlord's a business. I don't care if you're renting apartments or selling lemonade. You're a business, and you're expected to know everything. And the attitude of the court is, well, you're in this to make money. You're in this to rent. You've got someone in there, so let's make that work.
I was reading a story yesterday about a 70-year-old landlord who could not get, who she rented out her farm, the family farm, for about 6 years, and wanted to get back into the farm because of financial situation. And the tenant was one of these professional tenants that would not allow her to move in. So evidently, in Massachusetts, if you come up with a
Are there farms in Massachusetts?
oh yeah
Oh, yeah.
one or two.
Sure.
oh yeah, I wonder if they have corn
Where do you
there.
think? Where do you
They
think
have
all
corn.
our locally sourced produce comes from? It's not just falling off of trucks on Route 93.
Oh.
So she wanted to get back.
So
I
wait, so there's
digress, I
somebody.
guess.
So there's somebody in the farm
Someone was
renting.
renting.
A
She wanted to-
professional tenant.
They call them professional tenants because they know exactly how.
They know the
to-
law
They
They
know
know
the
what to
law.
do.
better
They
than
know
the landlords, right?
That's right.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So this 70-year-old had no chance against these people. So they
I don't
came up with
understand
health,
that.
Yeah, so they came up with health code violations. So when there's a health code violation, it's harder for them. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's harder for them to kick that person out because what they can say is, well, that's
It's
retaliatory.
retaliatory.
Because
absolutely.
you know because I blew the whistle on you because of these health concerns, then you can't evict me now.
For 6 months.
Yeah. for
Well, if
6
there are
months.
health
Wait,
concerns, they should be able to get the tenant out, and the landlord can't move in until they're fixed. Like that's how I'd fix it.
Right, but you're sensible. Right.
Right. Right now, I am.
Right
So
now.
you're saying the
Yeah.
tenant comes up with health
Yeah.
code violations,
And then it's
and
a
then
def-
you
it's a
then if you try
defense-
to get them out, you go, oh, because I pointed this out, you're trying to do this.
right,
Retaliation,
right,
yeah.
right,
Right.
And then it's questionable where those violations came from in the first
right
place.
because
Right.
a lot
Oh,
of
because
lot
the
of tenants do
tenant
that.
might do it.
Right,
Sure.
right.
What's
Oh, yeah.
what's a health code violation?
Or a toilet that doesn't work. It could be as little as a torn screen,
Okay.
letting bugs in. You know, anything from that to a toilet that doesn't work or not adequate hot water.
See, that's
stove.
stupid
So
stuff.
you notify
you
the
know.
state, or the tenant notifies the state, and they have actually 6 months. And let me ask you this too. There's a lot of questions. Can you so in Massachusetts they don't even have to pay that rent sometimes, right?
That's right.
While the
Depending on the violation, they can withhold rent. They can repair and deduct. They can make the fix, deduct it from their rent.
yeah, but who manages that? Like, what if I
The city.
got a
The city.
$200 screen?
No, you got to get the city health inspector or building
Okay.
inspector to come in and.
So it's not like
But in a
just-
lot of states, if there's arguments over it, that tenant would have to put the money in escrow. But in Massachusetts, it seems like they can say, I'm just not paying you rent for a while on
Right.
this.
Now, the only time you have rent escrow, if they even do it, is during appeals for eviction, but that's way down the road when there's actually an eviction that took place.
So how long does it take to get somebody out?
years.
Well, the normal process is 90 days, from the notice to the summons to appearing in court, maybe even physically moving them out.
Right.
But then you have all these things that get in the way in the meantime.
yeah.
The tenant doesn't show up at the trial and then calls the next day, tells the court they were sick. The court says, well, what difference does it make if we do this all over again? So we're going to throw out the judgment and start over again, and the landlord has to come back and
Another
plead
90
his
So
days.
you're
case.
talking. You're
Well, it's
talking.
not
It could
90
take a
days for
year,
that.
year to
It
get
can
them
take
out,
it
right?
can take a year. It can take a couple of years. Depends on how aggressive
That's
the
just
tenant
not
is.
right.
What if
you
the
know?
tenant's not paying paying the rent?
The
It doesn't
tenant's not
matter,
paying
right?
well, the first thing that happens is you get a 14-day notice. And the 14-day notice says you've got 10 days to fix the problem by paying everything that you owe, and here's how much you owe. And if you don't pay in 10 days, you got to be out in 14. At the end of the 14 days, you get a summons, and as long as that's served by a given Monday, then it needs to be filed at court with a filing fee, $135 to $150, depending on where you're going. And then there's an answer date, so the tenant has an opportunity, as any defendant would have, to, answer the complaint, his side of the story. And then the Thursday after that is the trial date. So, it's like 3.5 weeks to get to trial.
Right.
For non-payment.
Now,
For
what
non-payment.
if you ask for a jury trial? Does that push it off?
Well, it's interesting about jury trials, because with a jury trial, you only get a jury trial if there are facts in dispute. Okay, the judge is the trier of law. You look at this and you say, well, what do these jurors know about law? Why are these people sitting there? They're judging me. It doesn't work that way. It's the judge that does the trying on the law, and all the jury's there for is to look at the facts. Well, he said this, she said that. Did this really happen? And they sit in the back room and go through all that sort of thing, just trying to put the story together. That's what the jury does. So a lot of the times, if they want to argue over whether the toilet was broken or not, then yeah, maybe you want a jury for that. But most of the time, you're not entitled to a jury.
Wow.
Right, because the facts are the facts.
That's right.
That you're not paying your
Did
rent.
you pay the rent? No.
Right.
Man.
So there's nothing to
Is there
dispute.
any
Nothing to
is there
dispute
any
the facts.
discovery to this at all?
Oh yeah,
interrogatories?
yeah. That's
So wouldn't
really
that-
that's funny. What'll happen is once the tenant is served, what'll happen is the tenant will get discovery. Now there's already a set of pre-printed questions out there, and you put a checkbox on. You can only ask 35 questions. So out of these 100 questions in this thing that's been copied 400 times, you get to check off 35 questions. And when you do that, the trial date gets kicked out a couple of weeks.
They limit you to 35 questions?
Right, but it doesn't matter because they don't really care what the questions are when they choose them, and nobody ever reads it anyway. All they're doing is getting the 2 weeks.
Right,
Oh.
right,
You know,
right.
So that's discovery.
Okay, so you can push it out
Realistically,
another
I mean,
couple-
there's probably been cases where discovery was realistically used, but for the most part, a lot of the times it's
My
not.
God, people suck.
I know. So I had a question for you. What if you owned like a
Sweet
3-family
Lord.
house in
Three-family,
in
yeah.
Everett, and all rental units, and then you have discovered that there's drug trafficking going through one of the units? As a landlord, what are your rights?
Well, there's a couple of
You-
points
You
there.
could probably kick them out because of criminal behavior.
Are you
Right.
living
Well,
in the
yeah,
house?
yeah, but it's
No.
it's still the normal process.
Are you
With-
are you selling the drugs, Kathy?
No, but
Are you-
we have it in the
Are they
town
good
that I
drugs?
live in. I don't know.
Are you getting a good deal on the drugs?
How did they get
This
there?
is a hypothetical, guys.
Who are
I
these?
had a friend who was interested in drugs.
What's the address?
So, but it happens a lot in the cities. It happens.
does. It does. And what happens is, as a matter of fact, if there's a person that lives in a town that's caught dealing drugs, the city will send a letter to the landlord and demand that the landlord evict the person. But you have to go through that same
same
Has
notice
to
thing,
be a
right?
process, right?
same process. But if in fact you have a downright crack house going on in your building, as long as you got the police and fire chief on board to
That they
sign
know.
affidavits and they've got to be actively
Right.
interested.
Yeah,
in,
they've
we
been
want
watching the house for a while.
In
or-
that case, you can get fast track, and that's all you can do.
Right.
I mean, generally, I have landlords allotted. It's kind of funny when you think about it that they always say, "Well, I'm going to tell them it's for my daughter's getting married, and she needs it." And all.
Right.
No,
That doesn't
none
cut
of
it.
that stuff counts.
No.
I mean,
Right.
they've already prefigured everything.
Yeah.
They're smarter than the rest of us, and they've been around a
Sure.
long time, and all the rules are set, and there are no loopholes.
Sure.
There's nowhere you're going to say, "Well, you have to leave tomorrow because of this." No, that's not going to
It
happen.
Now,
does.
what if,
right. So
what if-
they all go through the same due process.
All go through the same due process.
what do you
except
have
the-
if you?
except the
What
crack
happens
dens.
if you get a judgment and the people refuse to leave?
They refuse to leave, then that's when the constable comes in, and we have to give them a 48-hour written notice in advance that we're coming in to take them out. Now, we have bonded storage warehouses with trucks that are licensed just for this business, and we come in there with them at the appointed time and break the door down if we have to.
Oh, you do?
Or bring a locksmith and pick the lock. We're going in no matter what.
Now the landlord is paying for all this.
Landlord's paying for the moving, but not for the storage. The tenant's responsible for their own storage.
But if they're not paying their
Right.
rent,
If
there's
there's-
a good
if
chance they're not
right.
paying the
If-
storage.
If they're already deadbeats, then that
Well,
just
that's true.
gets added
That's
on.
true. The downside to this is that, first of all, the landlord's paying a lot more for the moving than you'd expect anyway. But the bonded mover is required to store the goods for 6 months. So he's stuck with it for 6 months. So he's going to be charging the landlord an adequate amount to at least break even on that. But at the same time, he will, aggressively chase the tenant if we can even find him, because they all tend to disappear.
But then
most
will
of the
they
time.
sell their belongings
They'll
after
sell
6
it or
months?
throw it out.
Yeah.
Without depending on what the stuff
They'll
is.
go on
Yeah.
storage wars.
Storage.
Yeah.
wars,
Storage
exactly.
was. Oh yeah.
There's
you'd
a
love
bunch
to-
of hoarders that are going to buy this stuff.
People need more shit.
in the stuff
know.
in the stuff that we store. I mean, I remember one woman had a whole pickup truck worth of those blow up Santa things that you put on your front lawn.
Yeah.
the plastic.
I wasn't sure where he was headed with that.
I mean, they were this big,
Sure.
and they were worth, $2.50 a piece.
Sure.
And she was going to pay for a storage unit to save these things.
Yeah.
I says, you can always go to Walmart and get new ones. They
Right.
look nicer.
I'll give you the
know?
$20.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Here's $20. Just throw them out.
You
How
know,
often do you have to do that?
The actual it's called the execution. Oh, I got one.
No, actually, I have to put it in storage.
Oh, I got one Thursday. It runs hot and cold. I mean, I've done 10 a day. Back during the foreclosure crisis,
Right.
what a horror show that was.
Wow.
You know, we were running all over the place. You know, abandoned buildings. You know, with stuff in
They
them.
were just walking away.
Oh, it was so freaky. It was like a Twilight Zone thing. You know, you walked into the kitchen and there'd be a cup of coffee with mold in it and a newspaper here.
Like literally, they just got up.
Yeah. You go in the bedroom and the sheets are pushed back and there's a pair of slippers there. You go, wow, it's like everybody just vanished.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
This
Where they
is
got
why.
the call.
This is why years ago, old Italian fellas had what they called a very successful fire. It worked out mutually
Yeah.
agreeable for everybody. Tenant moves, insurance company pays off, you build a new building and start over.
Right.
That's the great American way.
There was a store like that in Reading, not doing well. Had 2 stores, one in Reading, one in Saugus. I won't name the store because this is allegedly.
Right.
The Reading store burns down.
Yeah.
2 days later, the Saugus.
That's a
What is-
spade
what
of bad luck. That's some bad
It's
luck.
like
Yeah,
like
don't-
the fire chief in one of the towns in South New Hampshire, Southern New Hampshire. He lived next door to the fire department, and his house burned
Right down.
I
Yeah.
said, how could that? They can't smell the smoke. They all live there. No, there's no way.
They were having a barbecue out back at the time.
Yeah.
You know, they do that a lot.
They're very suspicious to me.
I knew a guy lost his building in a flood. I says, how do you start a flood?
Ask Christine
That-
Hurley. She
that
knows how to
happens.
start a flood.
Uh-oh.
I can't believe she told that story.
Oh my God,
I
that
hope
was great.
none of our neighbors are watching that one.
No, they're not friends anymore.
It's like,
That's my point.
that's like there's an old joke about that where the guy goes, I'm sorry to hear about the fire. The guy goes, shh, that's tomorrow.
There you go.
That's awesome.
There you go. Well, I had a case one time. This was in Lawrence, and it was during the foreclosure crisis. We were closing buildings down all over the place. It was like a wasteland. And so we go into this building. Now, the bank was a bank-owned property at that point. And what we would do is the bank would come and change the locks and take over once we took everything out. Well, we show up at this, and the people doing this weren't that bright. So, you know, you didn't know what you were going to run into. Sometimes they never showed up. So we show up at this property, and there's new locks on the door, and the old locks are sitting on the floor. And so, well, the bank's already been here. Now we got to break in to do our job. Bank's going to have to come back again. We go in there, we clean the place out, normal like everything else. About 2 months later, I get a phone call from the court. So you in trouble. I said, what's the matter? You went and locked a woman out of her apartment. You didn't put her stuff in storage. I said, I never do something like that. What's the matter with you? What are you talking about? Tells me the address. Oh, it was so long ago, I couldn't remember which one it was. And then I said, yeah, I know that one. I said, no. So she said, well, she's here. She's filed a complaint. We'll have to get back to you on it. And I said, all right. So I called my mover, and I said, you remember that one? And da-da-da. He says, yeah. I said, you know, I'm going to go up there. I got to see this place. I want to see what's going on. I'll come with you. So we drive up there, and we look in the window. There's a pile of building debris in the backyard. It's the kitchen. Let's look at this. I remember this floor tile, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a UPS or FedEx box there with a woman's name and address somewhere else in Lawrence. And so we're looking in the window. The place has all been rehabbed since we've been there. And there's a bird in a cage, and there's a cat in there. The whole thing, you know, this place is, you know, totally occupied. And I said, this just isn't right. So we went to the address where the box was from. It was the woman's mother was there, and the woman was at work. And turns out what happened was some guy identified that it was an empty property. He went in there and changed the locks, went down to the grocery store and stuck a thing on the community bulletin board of an apartment for rent. He rents this apartment to this woman,
wow.
and she says, well, I want a new kitchen. He says, tell you what, you give me 3 months rent in cash. You can put in a new kitchen, deduct it from your future rent. You do it any way you. Oh yeah,
Of course.
Yeah, the bank had to leave her in there for like 6 months just because of the embarrassment of the whole
Wow.
Right. Wow.
But that's the kind of stuff that was going on back
Wow.
then. You know.
Might have to have Scott on our show about scams.
Yeah, that sounds
that
good.
should be right up
So
there.
the guy didn't have anything to do with the house.
No.
Nothing to do with it. They don't
Just-
even know
he
who he was. Never saw
just
him
found a
again. He
vacant
just
home.
took the cash and boom,
Right.
he's gone. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's a
Wow.
good business plan, right?
I'm
there.
telling you. I'm telling you, good retirement.
I like it.
Tony's evaluating it right now.
Yeah. Somebody gets a place to live, you get some money.
Sure.
Seems equal to me.
All right, here's a question for you. And I
All
think I
right.
know the answer. Well, I'll just say the answer. You cannot discriminate someone just solely because they have a criminal record.
Why not? No, because you discriminate. You can do that when they're applying for a job. You don't want a felon working for your company.
You have to use other extenuating circumstances. You can't. Fair Housing has said, well, just because he's a criminal, we're trying to rehabilitate him.
He's got to live somewhere.
He's got to live somewhere, and we got to get him back on state.
Not in my property.
I had an eviction on a guy, and it was really kind of funny and sad at the same time. The neighbors found out that he had been a level 3 sex offender, so he was
that's
registered.
a different story.
It's a different story, but
Yeah.
I don't know what the case was. This guy was a PhD. He was a bit of a nut. Okay,
Well, sounds like it.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
a PhD. I go in his apartment, and he was a collector of buttons.
All right.
And he had his whole dining room there was millions of them. It was the strangest thing. But he
Did
was
you have to collect each and every one of them? When
yeah, we were going
You
to
have
box
to
them
pick
up.
them all up.
Well, he packed all this stuff up, and he did get himself a new apartment, so we didn't have to come in and drag him out of
And
there.
imagine that inventory list.
I know it.
A red, shiny button.
I got to know the guy, and I
Yeah.
just said to myself, he had someone, he was working at a university, and some woman fingered him. Well, there we go.
There you
again.
go.
There's that word
It
again.
all comes back to that, doesn't it?
Can't you just say pointed at him?
She pointed him out, and she made accusations out
We've
to him.
never had that expression
And
on
I
our
could-
show
I
ever.
know,
and
and
we
now
have
it's all
thinking
once.
twice today.
Yeah. Anyway, so and I didn't see him as a guy adequately to defend himself and all of that. So I just kind of felt bad for him. But the reason I tell the story is, he gets another apartment, puts his stuff in there, he gets the keys.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't say the city, and I will if you tell me to. But
Okay, we want to know.
Just give us the first letter.
C.
Chelsea,
No.
Charlestown.
Cambridge.
No.
Chelmsford.
Well, let me tell the rest of the story first,
Okay.
because you'll figure it out probably more realistically than Chelsea. The police chief calls the landlord because he had to go down and register. And he told me, he said, I don't mind all this. He said, the trouble is I hate going down to register because it's just so nasty to me when I do that. He goes down to register. The police chief calls the landlord and says, did you know? He says, no, I had no idea. Well, he's got to go. We don't want him in town. You got to get him out of here. And she went to him and said, I need my key back. Can I take your stuff out? No due process, no nothing.
Oh,
just
yeah.
boom, And so he said, I can't take this. I have to go. And I says, fight it. Really, you're entitled to it. Once again, if we intended for these people to curl up and die, we should put them out on the islands and leave them there. And that's not what we want to do for the criminals or the offenders.
Right.
If there's any kind of offenders that are likely to reoffend or hurt anybody, that's different.
Right.
But anyway, so they made the police chief made this woman kick him out, and the point was that if you look on their site, the Sex Offender Registry Board site, they will show you by city and town in Massachusetts how many are registered in those cities and towns.
Oh, really?
You know what they were in this city?
None.
0.
Right.
And it was the only one. And I'm sitting there going,
Cohasset.
Cohasset, no.
Chatham.
No. All right, it was Concord.
Concord.
Oh,
Okay, that makes sense
that
too.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But is it legal for the police chief to do that?
I would
Probably
like
not.
to say probably not.
No,
I mean,
right.
there's not a statute on it
Right,
per se,
right,
but
right.
I could see somebody making a complaint of it and
Right.
something happening.
Well, I don't want a
You
level
know?
3 sex offender in my
Well,
neighborhood
you know what?
with young
I don't
kids.
either, and I'm not
So-
a big proponent of them or anything. But fair is fair, and like I said, either give them a village to live in, or you got to let them live among us. I mean, what else can you do?
Well,
you know?
right. And then the other thing, some people go on the sex offender list for jumping out of a car in the highway to go to the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
If you get
yeah.
caught doing that, that's a sexual
Different levels,
offense,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So there, you're right. I'm glad you brought that
I don't
up.
know why I'm
because,
looking at Tony.
oh, look at
Listen, when you gotta go,
I know.
You gotta
You
go.
gotta go.
I know.
I think that they should have that law until you get to a certain age. And then you just get to
Yeah.
take a leap wherever you have to. Because
That's
the
a point.
alternatives,
That's a good point.
Right, the alternatives are way worse.
Well, you got in trouble for smoking a cigar out by the dumpster where you weren't going to the bathroom in public. You
No,
were smoking,
just
a,
smoking
cigar.
a cigar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
When I was in New York City,
Right.
we got this album, The Best of Boston, that we're promoting. So we went down to New York City, and it was the same thing. Smoking a cigar outside, and people, I go, it's New York City.
Why
People
don't
getting
you-
sodomized against their will within 50 feet of us. There's a bus 30 feet away from us just spewing shit into the air. And this
Kilometers. Where do
offends
get
you?
kilometers?
What about you should have invited him to the party that you were at where there were 500 cigar smokers?
Oh, that was the best. The two guys.
Did you guys have
smoke
to
shop.
burn your clothes when you left?
No, I smell like that anyway. I'm no stranger to smoking.
So best of Boston, who's on that?
Oh, geez, it goes Don Gavin, Jimmy Dunn, myself, Corey Rodriguez, Will Noonan, Christine Hurley, Don Gavin,
Sweeney?
Steve Sweeney.
Pretty good.
I
Did
don't
you get-
think I missed anybody.
Did you get Kelly in?
Kelly McFarland,
Oh,
one
cool.
of my dearest friends.
Dan?
And Dan Crone. Dan Crone.
Kelly
Ed
McFarland's.
Mills. She's the best.
She's a riot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And New York City is just awful.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just.
We were talking about that before you got
I
here.
saw a guy in New York City. You're used to homeless people just spouting on the corner and stuff. I saw a guy who was working for UPS. He's walking down the street
In a UPS
in a uniform with a two-wheeler full of stuff, just screaming. Just like, God, you don't tell me, I tell you. Nobody gets in my way. I put my fucking truck wherever I go, this guy's got a job.
He's representing UPS.
He interviewed for this show. 20 people didn't get this job. What were they like?
Would you turn him down?
No, get
I
out
had
of the
the
way.
same thing happen to me last night at Shaw's. I was trying to buy half a dozen apples,
Yeah.
and the kid was using the F word like crazy.
Right,
I
right.
go, wow, it's nuts. And I saw the bag of apples go from $3, which was twice what they should have been, up to they went to $16. Finally, I said, you know what? Just take the apples off the
I
list.
think
I don't need apples that bad.
I can find apples out.
16
It's
bucks.
apple season.
And he's F.
Was he? What did he work there?
Yeah, he was the cashier.
Maybe he had the Tourette's. maybe.
It was close to that.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really was close to that. But I couldn't get over it. I went home and I
But,
said, you
but
know what?
every
Never
outburst,
again.
the apple price went up?
The apple, well, maybe it was a futures commodity thing or something. I mean, I just do evictions. I don't do.
On the upside of
Investing.
New York, I bought a Rolex watch for $5.
There you
I've seen
go.
them for way more.
Oh,
Yeah,
God, yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Twice that.
Yeah.
And then I met a lovely
That's
woman.
right, twice a day, I
yeah,
bet.
and I met a lovely woman in Greenwich Village who beat me arm wrestling.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
How big was she?
She had huge feet. Huge feet.
Are you sure she
Did
was
you
a
arm
woman?
wrestle?
Who am I to
she
question?
might. I know.
Who am I to
I
question?
know.
She was lovely. That's all I know.
Should we leave the show with those
Yeah.
pearls of wisdom?
Oh,
Sure.
my God.
I have a ton more questions for Scott, so maybe we'll
Tomorrow.
have him. Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or
or
come back on the
Yeah.
show.
Come back here.
Yeah,
he's
that was
still talking
that's
to us.
fascinating.
yeah.
That's good stuff. We can talk all about the security deposits in Massachusetts.
I mean, we didn't get much in, so come to my podcast and we'll talk.
So, but one
What's
more
your
thing.
pod? Do you have a podcast?
Not officially, no.
You,
But
you
Scott,
could have one. You want this
I
one?
know.
You want this one? We're not doing anything
How
with
much
it.
is it worth? How much you want for it?
Try to throw us out. Go ahead. See how long it takes you to throw us off this podcast.
You know what we could talk about next time we see you is why would you want to be a landlord with all these things stacked up against
Maybe that's
you?
how we'll start tomorrow's
It's
class.
getting to be a question.
Why do you want to be a landlord?
All
You
right.
hear all these people say, I'm going to rehab
That's
the
what we're
house
gonna
and use it as an investment.
Right.
Why do you want that? So,
Okay, that's how we'll start tomorrow's
good
class.
All right.
That sound good?
good.
All
Thanks
right.
for coming, Scott.
Scott,
Thank
thanks
you.
for
That was
coming.
It's
fascinating.
a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us here on the Real Estate House Party.
Woo.
Tony V, good to have you back.
Nice to be back.
Paralegal extraordinaire is Kathy Holtshouser. Her 1 minute a day, she relaxes and takes a little bit time off.
Yes.
And we
There you
got
go.
Scott Kingsley, who's going to be at
There
our
you go.
show tomorrow, our class tomorrow.
That's right.
Thank you.
It's going to be a show.
It's going
Dog and pony.
Doug and Tony show.
yeah.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.